nice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right.
Hello, Matt. Good morning.
Rob, do you know that what wonders can be found in your local public library?
Do I ever, Matt? It's your portal to adventure, Matt.
Portal to adventure, research, knowledge. I love libraries.
I also love the library. Sometimes it is literally your portal to adventure, Matt. In the most concrete of terms, as in the book that we were reviewing today, Candlekeep Mysteries.
Ooh. This is a collection of 17 short adventures for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
That's right, folks. Count them. Just 17. 1-7. It's a lot of adventures. Yeah.
Most of them are about the struggles of libraries. The fact that despite helping create most of modern human knowledge, a couple private corporations charge them exorbitant $1 million yearly fees to subscribe to the research that they help produce, and they don't have any money to do anything else, like buy books.
That's right. And you should never, under any circumstances, go to the website Sci-Hub and download or research any academic articles on your own, because that would be illegal, and you should not do that.
And we're saying this because this actually has nothing to do with what Rob just said, but we do have our first sponsor of the podcast. A brief ad read here. Dungeon Master of None is sponsored by Elsevier. Elsevier, the #1 collection of research databases and journals. It's essential for your research library. Elsevier. Subscribe today for, I don't know, if you want to subscribe as an individual, like $1 billion a month.
I do got to say, though, much of this, one thing that we learned over the pandemic is that bullying works, because JSTOR, after enough people hollered at them, now allows you to read 100 free articles a year, which is more than most people will need. And I actually do a bunch of research for my stream, and I haven't gone through any of those. So if you didn't know this, you can now go on JSTOR and look up any number of academic articles and read them for free. And I encourage you to do so. Never pay for academic research. In fact, pro tip from
never pay for it, because the money is never going to anyone whose labor created that research.
Right. And this is what I was going to say, is that if you email any professor that's not a dick and are like, hey, I'd like to read your paper, they will send you a PDF, because they don't make any money from like it being read in a journal. Like if it gets published, they already got what they wanted, which is a research credit. They don't really care if they want you to read their research, because if you don't email them, 5 people are going to read it. Like their peers in the field are going to read it, and then that's it.
What a lovely system we have, where our own research departments go bankrupt to have access to the research that they created. It makes sense to me.
It's a great system. So, with that in mind,
Mysteries.
let's talk about Candlekeep.
Candlekeep doesn't have to deal with Elsevier, which is I think why it's such a successful library.
Candlekeep appears to have some sort of independent funding mechanism. It's unclear. Possibly a hoard of gold, maybe a gift from some nobleman. It's unclear where magic.
It's basically, magic is the only thing that will solve this crisis.
I do think it would be funny, and this is not on any of the adventures, but to have a part of running Candlekeep Mysteries be about the funding troubles of Candlekeep. Trying to court various sponsors or nobles, like receive donations. I think that would be awful, but also highly entertaining.
Right. Do you want to get the bigger donation from the shady people in Baldur's Gate, or do you want the less substantial gift from more reputable masked lords in Waterdeep?
Do you let the upstart new money come in and like read all the books and like put his grubby fingers all over them because he gave a generous donation, or do you do you push back? Do you preserve the sanctity of the library and risk losing your funding? Such are the trials and tribulations of running an academic institution.
So we're bringing this up because Candlekeep is one of those just really, really great locations in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. Though we should mention that these adventures are flexible enough, you can basically run them in any campaign setting.
Yeah, this is really cool. It's presented as each of these mysteries, adventures, has to do with basically a book. And you frankly don't even need the book, but the book is presented like this is where it is in Candlekeep and how you might find it. You could also just grab the book and have the players come across it in any other adventure, or you could find another hook for the adventure. I love the framing device, but it's both perfectly flexible and entirely unnecessary, which is exactly how it should be.
Yeah, exactly. I was a little worried about this when I read the description of the framing device, but it's handled perfectly. But if you want to use Candlekeep, it is one of those just great fantasy locations that has been cooked up over the years for Forgotten Realms. It is this magical, practically endless library that is just filled with wonderful encounters and ideas. Right, the idea that to gain admission to Candlekeep, you have to bring a rare or like a book or an object that isn't in the library already, which is a great hook for your players in and of itself. Head back to some dungeons and find some rare or unusual things.
And I mean, the way I run my campaigns, just about any Forgotten Realms adventure will end up here sooner or later, because players want to or need to do research, and this is where you come to do it. I'm also very fond of this because it is where the classic isometric video game Baldur's Gate starts, and
Yes.
because I am a serial restarter, I have probably played the beginning of that game like 100 times. So it also is
the chanters. You've heard those chanters of the
so saith the
prophet.
wise Alando.
Yes.
I also, and I don't know why I did this, I think because I found it at like a garage sale, but I read the Cleric Quintet, which is about Catterley, one of the hangers-on in the Drizzt Do'Urden greater universe. It's a 5-book. I think it's all R.A. Salvatore, but maybe it's not. Anyway, 5-book Forgotten Realms adventure, which centers around partially Candlekeep. Anyway, this is an awesome place and a very, very cool location to either center an adventure on or have be a recurring location. And one of the things that's included in this book, and we should talk about what's in this book aside from the adventures, is a short but very useful description of locations and people in Candlekeep.
Yeah, this made me want basically an entire book that is just a source book for Candlekeep, because it's one of those places that can serve as an adventure hub by itself. You could run an entire campaign here or a couple very memorable sessions. Yeah, I basically want a whole book of this. But what we have is very useful and awesome. There's tons of really fun things here. Silver Dragon Ghost, a bunch of wandering Modrons, the constantly chanting people who are basically repeating fantasy Nostradamus's prophecies.
Little one, the intelligent ogre who just likes to read. I have used this NPC in another of my campaigns. He's great.
This is Rob's self-insert NPC.
It absolutely is. Smart and beefy, my favorite type of NPC. Yeah, and then you've got all of your main characters and important locations. So this is a
great map. Sorry.
Great map.
Amazing map.
We'll talk about is this worth it probably at the end of the overall review, but two things. Like, this is, if you're a dungeon master, this book, my initial impression is that it is incredibly useful. It's got so many cool things, so many adventures, NPCs and monsters to borrow, magical items. It also has this for Candlekeep, which is great if you're playing in Forgotten Realms, and you can, if you're shopping on D&D Beyond, like buy bits and pieces. And so I would definitely recommend, if you're ever going to run through Candlekeep, that this is worth picking up. It's a great section, and like Matt, I just wish it were longer.
Yeah, here's the deal: is 5th edition D&D has experimented with a number of publishing of pre-written adventure modules. Sort of gone are here's a short adventure that comes in Dragon magazine, or a paperback magazine style module of the 1st or 2nd or even 3rd and 4th edition days. Everything's in a hardcover. And so far, we've gotten huge adventures, right, that are going to take you a year to run, or maybe 6 months. And we've gotten ones that are collections of some, pretty good but previously published adventures. And Candlekeep Mysteries is the first in 5th edition of a adventure anthology, right? All of these are fairly short, can be run in probably 1 to 3 sessions for all of them. And for me, who doesn't often run big published adventures, right? Sometimes you can take those and you can steal bits and pieces of it or be inspired by it. But for these, it's so much easier to plop one of these down in your already running or already established campaign, which is why, we've taken so many episodes to review some of our favorite adventure anthologies, because I think it's our favorite type of book for dungeon masters. And now we have one from Wizards of the Coast. I think overall is pretty good.
To clarify, it's the first original adventure anthology, because Tales from the Yawning Portal and Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which were terrific, but they were republished in adaptations. And I agree with Matt. Someday I would like to maybe run through. Actually, the only full adventure I really want to run or play in is Descent to Avernus, which is my favorite of the full adventure paths that they've published. But increasingly, I'm more interested in the flexibility of having small, isolated adventures, possibly strung together with a homebrew plot of my own making. And this is just terrific for that. You can do what you wish as a DM, but I increasingly feel like the best way to run games, and in 5th edition, the best that you have access to, are often the smaller independent adventures. And, I have griped especially a lot about the quality of 5th edition's books. They're not always great, but I have to admit that the ones that are not crossovers or tie-ins have recently been pretty good, and they've been bringing in some new writers, and it shows. There's more creativity, there's more originality, there's just a lot less of the same tropes and ideas. Credit to Chris Perkins for being the only remaining guy who still writes good stuff, as far as I'm concerned. His fingerprints are all over this, and he wrote one of the adventures, which is great. But like a lot of the authors here are new to D&D or relatively new to the scene, and there's some great stuff in this. I'm really, really excited about what's on offer here. So credit to 5th edition, credit to WotC for listening to us yell at them for 5 years and bringing in some new and interesting writers.
Now, we can't be all the way positive, or we wouldn't be on brand, right? Which
Right.
is that I'm pretty confident this will be a well or best-selling adventure book. The rates for freelancers, based off of just hearsay, I don't really know, are not that great. Just based on, again, we don't have any special insider knowledge here. So I just, my only complaint is that some people have full-time jobs that are nice and stable from WotC, and they get a yearly salary and healthcare and things like that, like Chris Perkins, right? A lot of these freelancers, they get their name in a D&D book. That's pretty cool, but that doesn't pay the rent. And I just wish that, maybe more of these people had full-time jobs with WotC, or or the rates for freelancers for this stuff were much, much higher, right?
Yes.
Pay every freelancer $1 million and I will stop complaining.
That's exactly right. And, in our previous discussions with creators, this is a thing that comes up consistently, and none of them, again, can or will tell us the specifics because, there's NDAs and, they're not going to break that for our dinky podcast. But it's pretty clear that they're not getting paid a ton of money. And we know now that WotC is making pretty good cash, like that it's been a good year for Dungeons and Dragons. We have speculated endlessly about what their cash flow is like, but I'm fairly confident that they can afford to pay freelancers more.
Just share the wealth. Anyone can who gains entry to Candlekeep by submitting a unique adventure. Is literally the plot of this gets to share in all of the knowledge and resources of the library. Please let your freelancers in on that. Overall, I think this is a great introduction. I would say if anyone out there knows of an older source book, and I neglected to do my research, or a third-party offering that gives tons of details about Candlekeep, I would love to get my hands on something like that now. And I think that would be useful for this. My only critiques of this intro section are I don't really have any. There's tons of flavor, great maps. It's short, but gets all the information you need. I think it desperately needs somewhere in this book a D100 table of books for when players pull a random book off the shelf or you need extra ones. Some of the adventures have mini books that players need to find or get that don't have names. And, you could look this up on the internet, but give us a D100 table of books, please.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Candlekeep has only appeared in Sword Coast or Forgotten Realms guides. I don't know that there
isn't like a second edition Candlekeep book.
Yeah, maybe somebody can correct me, but I don't think so, though there's a lot of stuff from second edition that is either hard to find or kind of a little bit out of the way. So maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it only appeared in Forgotten Realms source books until now. So
hey, check this out. I was checking the DMs Guild to see if anything's there, and there's Elminster's Candlekeep Companion.
Ooh.
Which includes Ed Greenwood and great D&D writer Laura Hirschberner.
Okay.
Wow, this looks great. Maybe this. I'm gonna look at this before we finish.
We'll wrap that into
to
our
the wish list.
Our part 2 to talk about. Anyway, so let's talk about these adventures.
Yeah.
As
so
best
spoilers
we can.
for the individual adventures from this point on.
So one, we're gonna. These are written for the DM, so they tell you what the mystery is and then how to present it to your players. So if you read through this, you will be spoiled. But so warning. That being said, I'm so glad we're talking about this because one through line that I have noticed or that I picked up on immediately is that after we were talking about Call of Cthulhu for the last couple of weeks, we talked about how to make a scary or creepy or atmospheric or suspenseful adventure. And some of these are so good at that.
Yes.
Some of them are pretty fucking spooky. And it's I'm delighted. They did a really good job. Now I have a pretty overactive imagination, so it's pretty easy to spook me. Your players might not be impressed, but the way these are written and the way they are presented is a real I'll highlight the ones that I think do a really good job of this, is a real masterclass in creating suspense and fear and anticipation. And I think that these would be great one-shots for the spooky season, or for if you're playing a Ravenloft campaign, or if you want to adapt some sort of Call of Cthulhu, like we talked about. These are great companion to if you're trying to create either a suspenseful or mysterious or spooky atmosphere. I was very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, and for an anthology of independent adventures, Rob is right. They're tied through with a theme of many of them are spooky, most of them are mysteries, right? And they all have books in them, and all of them
have some manner of
use Candlekeep as
unsolved
yeah
question at the center of them.
Yeah,
the level of mystery varies, but this is a consistent theme. So,
all right.
Shall we just dive right in?
Let's dive right in and crack open our first adventure. This one's for first level characters, The Joy of Extra Dimensional Spaces by Michael Polkinghorne. And in this one, players seek aid in lifting a curse and discover a permanent extra dimensional mansion and then get trapped inside it. That's the basic idea.
It's the basic idea. The book in question is The Joy of Extra-Dimensional Spaces, and they might be asked to, like Matt said, lift a curse, or they might just come across it while researching creating permanent versions of spells or demiplanes, pocket dimensions, and other spaces that exist outside the material plane. I love this. So every adventure has a finding the book section, and there's a clear hook where they're like, you have been asked to do this, and then you find the book because of that. But they also might come across it in just the course of their research, which I love. I may just keep these on hand, and whenever my players are doing research in any library, or especially in Candlekeep, which happens pretty frequently, and they're asking the questions about any of these, I may just drop one of these in their laps because they can choose to pursue it, and they can choose not to. These are all self-contained. These are beautiful, perfect side quests. I love this so much I love giving players more options than they can necessarily pursue because, one, it forces decision making, and it presents the idea of a world that is greater than just their adventure. So this is just like a small section in each adventure, but I love this. And so if they're looking for doing research in any of these areas, they might come across this book, The Joy of Extra-Dimensional Spaces.
A great title for a book. The art on the cover has someone who is definitely Mordenkainen. So if players know anything, they're like, oh, maybe this has to do with Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion. And in fact, it does. Okay, so I like some of the basic ideas of this adventure. However, I'm not trying to be too negative here, but of all the adventures that we're looking at in the first half of this review, this one, I think it's not necessarily my least favorite, but it has the most problems or hiccups. Can we start with the given hook, which is that players come from a village that is cursed and are seeking a mage named Matreus to help them lift the curse on their village, right? Which is fine, I guess. It's not my favorite hook, but this adventure really has nothing to do with that curse. If you were a new dungeon master, right, and you picked up this book and you're like, I'm going to run the first adventure because it's for level 1 people, I don't know, your players might be a little bewildered if you're like, all right, here's the hook. You're all from a village that's been cursed. Here's your first adventure. You're not going to get back to that village at all, and it doesn't have anything to do with the adventure playing out.
Yeah, and this is the problem with this whole adventure, is that there's not really any reason to do anything. There's not really it's just very it's a bunch of interesting locations or an interesting location without anything really tying it together. There's not a lot of compelling. There's not really an adventure here. It's just kind of a place to explore. And I'm gonna
now the great thing of this is an excellent place to explore.
So,
right? And it's an extra dimensional space. You can put it anywhere. So
here's
that. Yeah. It's perfect as a actual adventure. The connective tissue is
non-existent, basically. So here's what actually happened, right? Matreus of course, the book opens a portal to a mansion somewhere in extra dimensional space. Matrius went through it. He's trapped. You go, you find him. He's got a little imp figurine. He walks through a door. The imp figurine is actually an imp. It kills him. You have to figure out how to escape the mansion. You put together a bunch of books.
The mansion was not made by Matrius, right? We gotta put this in here. There's a more powerful mage, Fistandia, who's created this, and you're basically going through her house, trying to figure out how to get out of here. And there's a puzzle. The first thing, right? So we talked about the hook. The other thing is players enter the extra dimensional space. The adventure, as written, has the mage they're looking for. What was his name? Matrius being like, "Hello, you found me. However, I don't know how to get out. I don't want to help you figure out how to get out. I'll just wait here and hold the door for you on the other side. You go explore this extra dimensional wizard's mansion for me, and I'll be right here when you get back, ready to help you uncurse your village." And then when players eventually solve the puzzle and get out, yes,
he's dead.
The person they came for is dead. Which is super frustrating. I think.
Yeah, and the puzzle is fine. You have to find a bunch of books.
Is it fine? It's
not
one
fine.
of those.
It's not.
Okay.
It's. I mean, it's boring, but it's easy. I don't know. You have to find a bunch of books. The books spell out liberty.
It's another one of those books spell out things. If you miss one of the books, your players have only spelled Trilby, and they're like, this mage is a fan of.
Gotta find the hat.
If they miss the E, they won't know it can be liberty. So
that's the whole thing, right? Is basically going through the mansion and finding these books. It's not much of an adventure. Here's what's cool about it.
Right.
Here's what
with all those problems, it's actually really good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the mansion is really neat. There's a small number of very interesting characters and locations. There's 2 homunculi named Cumin and Coriander that are really excited to cook for anybody because they don't have anyone to cook for. There's a bunch of cats that just like wander around. There's animated books, and
there's a bunch of great monsters. Crawling claws, a slad tadpole, right? An animated broom and bookswarm. This is a great eclectic collection of low-level monsters. Mm-hmm. That is an amazing alternative to sending your players into a cave full of goblins at low levels. And it's a fantastic location, right? It is very much a Fantasia exploring a wizard's tower. Should we actually be here? Dare we risk taking this magical thing?
Right.
Will Fistandia be super pissed at us? Yeah. The exploring this fantastic location is great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool locations, a lot of interesting things. There's some interesting loot, which is pretty rare for Wizards of the Coast.
They're
low-level adventure. They're pretty bad about providing like interesting loot. So, the other thing is that this is actually like pretty well balanced for first level characters. As we have discussed, almost every Wizard adventure is extremely threatening to low level characters, often like dangerously so. Especially some of the classics. So, there are things here that can definitely kill your players. It is unlikely.
There is a mimic.
There is a mimic, which is a
that
problem.
Has its hit points reduced, and it's one of its DCs lowered, but is still incredibly deadly and is very likely to like one shot a low level character. So if your wizard sits in the mimic chair, that wizard is gone. I'm okay with that. Don't sit in mimic chairs.
Yeah.
Now,
the one exception is definitely the mimic, which could absolutely. Everything else is probably manageable.
I think you should absolutely plop this mansion somewhere in your players, and it will work for higher level characters too. But I want to talk about the important things that you need to do to fix this. Right. Let's start with
first. I want to say though, and Matt, Matt, there's a lot of things you could do to fix this. I have a couple ideas, but that being said, this might be a good adventure for younger players.
Oh,
Players
absolutely.
who don't necessarily need direction or want direction and aren't particularly interested in maybe solving a big mystery. They just want to like talk to the
Explore a
homunculi
house.
and explore a
Yeah.
house, and they're not going to be like bothered that there isn't a big like hook to like. So if you were thinking of if you want to run something for your kids or your younger classroom, or this might be a good place to start. It's low stakes. It's not super challenging. It's fun and a little silly. There's a animated broom. This would, I think, like be a good choice. It's hard to
fun
adapt.
and silly while still having a bit of a threat. You
Exactly.
are still in a powerful wizard's
Right.
thing, and there are things that can be dangerous and
It's
fantastic.
a good
which is
a good
amazing.
balance, which is
balance.
sometimes hard to find with existing adventures. So if you've been looking for something to start, I actually think this would be great for that. Now, yeah.
To fix it, let's
fix it.
first start with Matreus. You just got to cut this Joker out of here.
Yeah, this guy
right?
sucks.
Matreus dies by DM fiat, which is silly. He's kind of there at the beginning and tells players go explore. I hate that. I hate that there's a NPC that sort of tells the players to exactly what to do.
He can
It's-
be
it
removed
also-
and nothing is lost.
Right.
There's
The players can pick up the imp figurine, which
Mm-hmm.
then transforms, which can be a fun, nasty surprise for the players. So you get rid of Matreus, nothing is lost. You make a different puzzle for escaping the thing. Finding 7 books with gilded letters that spell out a thing is boring. Just have the players find a command word in one of the libraries that opens the portal from the inside. It can be in any of the locations you want. In fact, maybe the person who created this, Fistandia, right? It says in the text, if she was afraid guests might get stuck, she might put many different clues as to what that command word is instead of having to go to every room.
This is a good location for an actual puzzle, and if you'll go back to our episode on puzzles, do not do what most D&D books recommend in puzzles. There are ways to do puzzles that are not punishing to your players. This is a good chance to put in a puzzle that is solvable multiple ways and is interesting. But yeah,
here's
no
what
one
you
wants
do.
no one wants to get locked in an extra dimensional mansion and have to like do math or word games. Nobody wants that.
Here's what you make the puzzle, because it will still be complicated for your players. You can keep it as it is. The exit to the puzzle is saying the command word liberty. Basically, almost every room has a clue for that, right? The homunculi will tell you that it's some sort of word about freedom that Fistandia, you can read in her journals, valued freedom. Fistandia has a motto that has the word liberty in it. Put 20 clues that the word is liberty, and players can find the escape in almost any room, and that way they can leave if they want, or they can continue exploring. The other thing you need to fix, and there's actually a really good puzzle in this adventure. In one of the rooms, it's enchanted to look like the night sky, and there are 5 telescopes, which can be, if they're pointed at 5 different stars, will open the door to a secret room. How cool. What a fun interactive puzzle. There's a clue for it in the other room. While the puzzle doesn't give any significance about why these 5 stars are important, you should add something about maybe Fistandia thinks these 5 stars are actually other worlds, right, on the material plane or something. There's something in a book about it. They're important to one of her spells or something, right? They should have some significance. As written, the players must solve this puzzle to find one of the clues to get liberty. And this is exactly what you don't want, right? You don't want these fun, difficult puzzles to be essential for the players to continue. Instead, have it open a secret room that has a little bit of extra treasure, but the players don't actually have to go into, right? If they don't solve the puzzle, that's fine. Maybe they'll come back here later.
I do agree with Matt, though. If you want to keep this challenge in there, you can also just keep everything the same and just have all of the books with the letters on their spines in one place. Have them unlock the planetarian room, and then everything they need is right there. They don't have to like scour.
Don't put it on the other side of the planetarium. Just don't put it in the secret room.
Your players can figure it out.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say about this adventure is, again, this is such a great idea of exploring, a wizard's extra-dimensional space. It says in further adventures, right? Well, what are Fistandia and her wizardly colleague Freyot doing? We know they're still alive. It's up to you. I would have just loved a couple suggestions as to what they are up to.
This is a neat touch because again, and your players have to either be smart or have good Arcana checks to know this, but since their homunculi are still alive, you know that they are still alive somewhere out there. And this is a great hook, which, like Matt said, is not really followed up on. So I would add, I would decide where they are and then add a little bit of like interest or something somewhere next to go to look for Fistandia or Freyot.
I would say, since they're incredibly powerful wizards, they are exploring those 5 stars, right? They've teleported themselves to that. Last but not least, final quibble, some conflicting information. It says at the beginning of this adventure, in arcane shorthand, she, Fistandia, details how she created a permanent Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion spell and records the command word to open the mansion's doorway. Later in the adventure, it says, Mistra granted Fistandia a permanent extra-dimensional mansion for her to reside in while studying in Candlekeep. Which one is it? Did Fistandia create this, or was this granted to her by the god of magic? What? Which one? Unacceptable. It doesn't really matter. Choose one of those, but it should be the first one.
Yeah, it's really funny. At the end, it's like, well, what do they do now that Matrius is dead? And it's like, well, you just find another sage to do it. Change the hook. Find another reason for your players to be here. I do want to mention, and this could potentially be dangerous, but this is a great location, and it would be an awesome either hideout for your players, or they could turn it into an inn or restaurant. That would be a very like magical D&D thing to have, is an extra dimensional space which they run as a tavern. And if
they already have the staff there, they've got the janitor, the animated broom.
That's right.
2 cooks.
And if your players want to
convince the imp to tin bar.
That's right. So if your players like this and they want to return here, I would encourage them to do that. I think that there's a lot of potential in reusing this location.
Right. Give them a way to, for example, build a new doorway here, right? In a village they want to set up in. And yes, they can then turn it into the extra dimensional inn, which is such a fun concept.
Mm-hmm. So I really liked this, but it's basically just like a collection of interesting ideas and locations and monsters with
which is perfect.
Which is great. You'll just have to, again, unless you don't mind like your players being a little lost, and you'll need to do some work to make this make a bit more sense. But this is a fun like intro adventure. I'm a fan generally. It just needs a little love.
Yes, that was The Joy of Extra Dimensional Spaces by Michael Polkinghorn.
Next up is Mazfroth's Mighty Digressions. These are all great book names.
Yes. This is for 2nd level. It's written by Allison Huang. You might recognize her name from some of the Uncaged anthology adventures. And in this adventure, it's basically a librarian's nightmare. Several books brought to Candlekeep are ridden with bookworms. No, they're actually fey shape changers that have been attacking people. And they're fake books, and the players have the opportunity to track these illegitimate book sales to a pack of jackalwares back in Baldur's Gate, and have many options for dealing with them.
Yeah, so Ging Watson, I think these are a Planescape invention. These
go all the way back to 1st edition.
Oh.
These are, I think they were first appeared in C3, The Lost Isle of Castanamir.
Wow, look at Matt.
I'm sorry.
Look at Matt with the coming in with actually knowing things.
I did some research on.
Okay. But yeah, so the book at the center of this is
It's not a book at all.
It's not a book at all, but the book that it is supposed to be is supposed to be about Mazfroth's essays on various things, but it is in fact a monster, and your players might come across it as they are looking for information about the weave or about lycanthropy or about demon lords, etc. But when they read it, they are attacked by this aberration shape changer, which reveals the central mystery, which is that, many of the books, or several of the books in Candlekeep, are not books at all. They're
several recent books.
They're very elaborate, monstrous fakes. And this is a librarian's nightmare. I also love this from a investigation standpoint, because I'm a nerd. Because then, because Candlekeep keeps meticulous records, you could be like, well, who brought this book here? And then you find all of these books, and then you go find the seekers who brought them, and then you start to uncover the greater mystery. It's delightful to me as somebody who enjoys research too much.
Right. The players will, in questioning people who have brought these books, though one of there are 3 books that were actually brought in this way. The players can talk to 2 of the people who and find out that they were in fact sort of duped by these books. You get 2 interesting NPCs, and they can give you plenty of clues that say that whoever is selling these books is in a marketplace, the Wide, back in Baldur's Gate, and so the players have a clear indication of where to go. I would have liked here an additional person as a clue. Like, for example, it might say, the 3rd seeker who brought the 3rd curse book that was here first, long time ago. They've already left Candlekeep, but they're in Baldur's Gate. You can look them up. And so if the players need additional information, you can go talk to them. It still points them in the right direction. But the players will have no problem arriving in Baldur's Gate and the Wide. There's a sort of a random encounter of they're attacked by a were-rat. This might be too many shapeshifters in one adventure. Players might get distracted and be like, wait a second, there's jackal wares, there's a were-rat. Are these connected?
On my first read, I thought they were related, but they're not, so that was weird.
Maybe have the random encounter be just a bandit who is not a shapeshifter.
This is my only complaint, and this is not really a complaint, but I think that this is such a rich and interesting idea that it could be longer. I think that actually, if I were going to do anything with this, is I would add a few more NPCs, add a few more steps, and maybe, a bit more happening at the end, because this is such an interesting. There's a lot of interesting NPCs. There's a really great backstory here, and it's a lot to communicate in a single session. And I think that there's definitely an opportunity here to make this a little bit longer.
Right. And the interesting backstory and setup is that the pack of jackal wares that have been selling these shape-changing books are running a book stall in the Wide Amber Dune books. And the reason they're doing this is they, in fact, followed a unusual lamia that had taken them as their own pack, but had been recently killed, and they're trying to raise money to resurrect her. And this is not as evil on the surface as it sounds, as this lamia sort of just wants to selfishly protect herself and her pack, and these jackal wares just want to raise her from the dead, and the players are given, or the adventure gives you plenty of information for the players to interact with the book stall, to scout the pack of jackal wares, and it gives a detail of their shady warehouse lair. And players are given basically free reign on how to solve this. They could talk to the jackal wares, negotiate something, demand some recompense for the harm they have caused, or help them resurrect their lamia pack leader, or just go in and murder them.
Right. You can, and this is terrific, you can solve this any number of ways. You can just murder all the jackal wares, which are technically neutral evil, so that's technically sort of fine, or you can demand payment, or you can, work something out and maybe even help them with their goal. These could become recurring NPCs. I think that, this isn't a complaint. I was reading this and I was like, there's so much going on here. This is so interesting. There's the Wide, there's the Amber Dune bookstore, there's Blackgate, there's all these different locations and characters. And I would beef this up a bit and I would make it a little bit of a longer adventure. I love presenting players with gray or slightly evil characters, but that are not threatening, and they have to make kind of a decision. Do we work with these people? Is it okay? Do we do the adventurer thing where we kick in the door and kill everybody? And this is an excellent presentation, because they're not really hurting anybody, and they didn't even mean for those books to end up in Candlekeep. In fact, they're quite frustrated when they find out that they did, because it drew attention to themselves, and that wasn't their intent at all. And it's still, yes, it's bad to sell monster books to people, but it's they're trying to raise money, and nobody died. Is that true? Nobody that we know has died.
No one has died. And here's the fun thing, and what Rob is saying is absolutely not a criticism. It's just the sort of formatting that these are all really short adventures. But this one is, as written, so easy to expand that any dungeon master reading it can be like, well, if the players are investigating in Baldur's Gate around jackalwares, they can find that, a mysterious jackalware a year ago basically came to a priest of so-and-so and inquired about resurrections. Mazaforth has some clues about Lamias, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So the players... And I would also add one thing the adventure says is that if the players just go in and kill all the jackalwares, they'll never find out their motivations. And I'm like, wait a second, you can absolutely add enough clues, including the dead Lamia heart and some information about resurrections, that these jackalwares were trying to resurrect a Lamia. You might not find out that this Lamia is maybe not that bad, but, don't punish your players for taking one particular approach.
Speak with Dead is always an option, too. They can, even if they murder all of the jackalwares, there is still a way to find out what they were up to if the players really want to know. So I guess, this was great. And all this is a great adventure because all it did was make me think of how much more I wanted to do with it. So that's a terrific recommendation as far as I'm concerned.
There are many great mysteries here. This is one that I think is the best, at least of the ones we've read so far, sort of social urban investigation mystery that gives you all you need to have, can easily be expanded, and really leaves it up to the players on how to solve this.
There are two random combat encounters, the were-rat who fights them and if he survives comes back, which could just be dropped. If you want to just have a largely social investigative adventure like this one, this can be solved without combat, I guess, except at the very beginning with the monster book. But if your players are into that, I think this is a great option as written.
Yeah, how nice. I think this might be the only one of the ones we've read so far that does not require any combat, which is great.
All right, what do we got next?
That was Mazaforth's Mighty Digressions by Alison Huang. And next we've got Book of the Raven for 3rd level by Christopher Perkins, a young up-and-coming dungeon master who's worked on D&D since 1st edition.
This was one of my favorites, though there are issues with it, but this Book of the Raven is, as it turns out, it's about Vistani, and you might find it if your players are looking into Vistani or Planar Travelers or trying to find out about Shadowfell, or It can just be brought to them by a raven, which is, you know what? As far as hooks go, good enough for me. I'm fine with that, you know.
So, I've got a mighty digression here on this one, right? So, Wizards rightly received a lot of flack for sort of repeating the pretty harmful and racist stereotypes about Vistani that, you know, correlate pretty one-to-one with the Romani people or travelers in let's see, in Curse of Strahd, and these have been around for a long time in D&D, and this tries to, I think, maybe
right that wrong.
Yeah, how do you think it did at that?
It seems a little heavy-handed, to be honest. It's only because I know the backstory. If you're coming to this fresh, then maybe it won't matter, but the book is about how nice the Vistani are, all the ways that they help people, which I think is lovely. And I think that it is a presentation of a traveling people, of a Roma people that is just as true to life and more interesting than the harmful stereotypes. Do I feel like this solves the problem? Not necessarily. It feels like, still feels like, I guess I wish it didn't feel like such an obvious attempt to deal with those criticisms. However, if the Vistani are going to stay in the Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons lore, I think this is a good step towards making them not an obvious, collection of negative stereotypes.
Rob, this is, and we can cut this because this is another mighty digression. But
this is
know,
what
being
people come
North
here
Americans,
for, Matt.
Right? Yeah, that's true. That's true. I thinking about like racism and bigotry and oppression against Romani people is, at least as North Americans, not something I was like super aware of. Right. But in Europe, like this is like a huge issue. I was just remembering the time you and I were driving through Hungary, and we were behind a truck. And
it was Romania. I know exactly what you were talking about. It was Romania. Yeah.
And we were behind like a pickup truck or like it was
a
small,
lorry.
Like,
it was like a
lorry.
big, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lorry. And there was an older Romani woman standing on the side of the road. The truck slowed down. And then for no reason, right, other than just racism, poured like a soda on this old woman's head.
I remember that.
It was one of the most shocking things I think I've ever seen. And it blew me away.
Yeah. So I think you're right here in that as Americans, we're not really aware of the extent and severity of anti-Roma racism, but it is real and significant, and so I appreciate the effort made here. I shouldn't gripe. Honestly, it's fine. They're trying. I shouldn't fuss because this is a good attempt. It feels a little bit heavy-handed.
So
because
the thing that needs to happen is the Vistani need a whole rewrite.
Yeah, they need
But obviously there's only so much you can do in this one adventure, and this is just a story that Vistani are nice.
Well, and the thing is like what needs to be done to undo the harm of stereotypes and of racism or of misogyny is not, or of any structured discrimination is not, the answer to feminism is not like all women are wonderful, and like being anti-racist does not mean all black people are heroes, right? That's its own form of like, that's the whole like magical Negro thing. Like that's the answer is not to make them into wonderful people across the board. The answer is to treat them like people, like nuanced and complicated real human beings, or in this case interplanar travelers. So that's my only gripe with this presentation of Vistani, is that it just feels like an overcorrection. Again, I probably shouldn't gripe because at least they're listening,
Yeah, I mean, that critique makes sense to me. Again, we're not the experts on it, but it does make sense to me, right?
So anyway,
but at least it's an attempt.
Big digression. Let's talk about what's in Book of the Raven.
So, despite Book of the Raven being a tale about Vistani, the actual adventure contained in this chapter doesn't really have anything to do with Vistani directly, though it does have to do with the Shadowfell and maybe even a little hint of the domains of dread are mentioned. Players find a map stuck in the Book of the Raven to a destination called the Chalet Brantifax, in which there is a group of possibly good, or definitely good, but possibly friendly were-ravens whose task it is to hide evil artifacts, a cursed mansion, and a crossing into the Shadowfell plane.
Yeah. So this thematically and directly is very, very close to Ravenloft. It has were-ravens. It has French-sounding names. It has spookiness. If you wanted
There's
to,
a poltergeist.
If you wanted to
There's
include
a lot of gravestones
in either an introduction to or as part of a Curse of Strahd campaign, it would be a perfect addition. If you wanted to run a different kind of Ravenloft campaign, this is exactly right. So, Matt, I loved this, and I want to talk about what's in it, but correct me. So maybe I missed this. So let me know if I'm not understanding. But it's not clear to me what the players are seeking or what they are going to get at the end. I mean, wanting to find out like what this treasure map is about is good enough for me, but it's not really clear that there is actually anything at the end of it that's important. Am I wrong about that, or am I misunderstanding?
I think this one is you're not misunderstanding. I think to set this one up, you either just need to have a party that's interested in exploring any map they find, or a party that has a evil artifact that they need to get rid of, or a party that needs to go or wants to go to the Shadowfell. If your party has those goals, this setup works.
Right. I guess the real like thing at the end is that there's a passage to the Shadowfell, which is apparently rare and exciting. And this is significant if you need to go there for some reason.
Now, one of the great things about this is not only do you get a haunted house, but this which you can absolutely steal if you need a creepy haunted house in your adventure. You also get a great group of NPCs for the players to interact with, a kindness of were-ravens, a group of were-ravens called the Scarlet Sash, whose sole goal is finding, and very raven-like, hiding evil artifacts, which I just thought of the like beginning of Lord of the Rings where they're like, all right, Gandalf, we'll put it away. We keep it hidden. We never speak of it again. I'm like, yeah, that's a good plan. Like, just throw it in the ocean, you know? And they're the kind of like, that's their approach to dealing with evil artifacts, which makes sense to me. They hide them. And what a great NPC idea.
What a great NPC. Well, because they're ravens. Because ravens collect things, and they collect evil things. It's perfect. It's a great group.
It's so good.
And I would bring them back, right? Or, they can be useful anytime the players find any magical thing. They can keep evil things for them. This would be
they could be quest givers,
There could be so many good quest givers. This would also be a great quest hub if your players wanted to use that for, again, exploration in a Ravenloft setting. So they have to go to Which Way, which is a abandoned hamlet, then follow the map to the Chalet Brantifax, which is a haunted house. And here's the thing. I actually like this. There's not a ton going on in the Chalet Brantifax. It's not filled to the brim with cloakers or skeletons or poltergeists. In fact, many of the rooms are empty. But as I was reading this, I was like, oh, spooky. And there's a story behind it, right? What happened to Baron Brantifax and his family, which is, again, pretty spooky. But, your players will find themselves going through this house and expecting things to happen. And there are definitely like a few ghosts and other things to encounter, and some, gargoyles and wights and things. But ultimately,
if they cross to the Shadowfell.
If they cross the Shadowfell. But ultimately, there's not much in the house itself. And I think this is terrific. I think this is a great, like, atmospheric, spooky, exploration, investigation. It's like playing a Resident Evil game. There's or like a Silent Hill game, right? Like
Yes.
there's definitely like moments of excitement, but most of it is just sort of like creeping through, finding out what happened, reading a little bit and learning a little bit more. And it's great. I love
The
it.
creepiest part is the crossing to the Shadowfell itself, which the players have to dig up and then lie down in a tortured dead child's grave.
Yes,
and they will
it's extremely
come back
metal
into
and
the
spooky.
Shadowfell.
Yeah.
Now, my only critique of this shadow crossing is that basically in order to find it, the players have to befriend and talk to the were-ravens, which the players are not familiar with their lore or don't pick up on the hints given in the book that ravens are actually nice, be the friend of ravens, then they might not be able to do this. So I would definitely add a couple clues that might point them, especially if they're coming here looking for a Shadowfell crossing, right? The Book of Lore speaks that tortured souls are the portal to deeper darkness. The ravens might know that a crossing is here, and this is why they kind of guard this place. They don't know exactly where. Maybe there's a clue on the daughter's headstone instead of just saying Sylphine, may she find peace at last. It maybe says, may she find peace at last in another world, or something like that. Just add a few more clues about where the crossing might be. There's definitely a deadly encounter on the other side, which is great.
Yeah, there's a journal that they can find which tells them most of this, but they need the help of the were-ravens or something else to get the rest of it. I would do exactly what Matt said, add more clues, maybe more journals, maybe something else, but right as it is, they need the were-ravens to kind of like get them the rest of the way. So
all right, Rob, sorry, go ahead.
No, the final thing, they lie down in the grave, they go to the Shadowfell, they find themselves in a mausoleum. They fight a white
and some skeletal horses.
And some skeletal
Rob loves
horses
getting kicked to death by horses,
which is a pretty badass final encounter. The only thing there is the saddle of the Cavalier, which is cool. It's a cool item. I don't know. Maybe there should also be something else there. It just feels very like anticlimactic, I guess.
I think the assumption here, which is maybe not forefronted, is that the players need to do this adventure if they want to cross to the Shadowfell. And so the idea that they are now in the Shadowfell should be, this is a transitional adventure.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
As a transitional adventure.
Anyway, it's a great
Rob,
adventure. It's
a great
very
adventure.
cool. It's very spooky. I'm a big fan of this one.
I can hear our readers nodding, nearly napping. So suddenly there's coming a tapping as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. That was the Book of the Raven, written by Christopher Perkins.
Nevermore.
I think we have time for one more.
Let's do one more.
Right.
And this is one of my favorites, so I'm excited to talk about this one. So the next one is A Deep and Creeping Darkness. And this one was written by Sarah Madsen.
And it's for 4th level.
It's for 4th level. So I think, let me check this before I say.
So here's the basic summary of this one. A mining town's inhabitants have disappeared. Players have a clue as to why. They must investigate said mining town, and which contains valuable riches, and figure out what has happened to everyone.
Yeah, so it was a platinum mine, platinum mine. Very, very valuable, and yet somehow abandoned. And the book, once again, your players might be given instruction to look for it directly, or they might come across it as they're investigating mining or local history or unexplained disappearances. And I like this one, Matt. I like this one a lot. And
right.
What they find out in the book is they find out about a mountain village, Vermilion, which had a platinum mine. Something happened. There was an explosion. People started disappearing. And then ultimately, the village was abandoned. And no one's able to keep the mine open. It's been empty for decades. And Yeah, there's a couple of people who have survived who can answer questions about it, but ultimately no one really knows what happened there.
Right. The only survivors were like children at the time, and the players are introduced to kind of a hub town nearby called Marin, and some NPCs they can talk to them there. This is a great hook. I would just say that one of the problems here is that there's a lot of foreshadowed information in the book, which is basically presented to you as the dungeon master as like, it's like a tale of true crime and mystery, but also by a bard that might have exaggerated it. And you have to, as the dungeon master, do a lot of work to basically read the essential information to the players. If the players are like, I read this book, you've got a lot of information you need to dump on them, and making that interesting could be a little difficult. I would have loved 3 paragraphs that are like, here are the important snapshots from the book that you could just hand to players. Instead, we have a very long description of all the things in the book.
Mm-hmm. The other thing
the players need to know.
There's a what I frankly believe to be a better hook, and this is just here in a sidebar, but just stake in the mine. Like either the players can, of their own volition, be like, I'll open up a platinum mine, or somebody can say, hey, if you can all go to Vermilion, clear it out, get the mine safe again, you'll get X percentage, which could be a truly exceptional amount of money, right? That's not every party is money driven, but like the lure of both adventure and treasure is what drives Dungeons and Dragons. And this is a perfectly good hook, right? Somebody found out about Vermilion, or somebody wants them to look into it, and there they go. But as written, Matt's right, you kind of have to decide what to tell them, what not to tell them.
Yeah. And the rest of the adventure is a fairly open-ended map of both the hamlet, really, of Vermilion, and with some details of the mayor's house and of the platinum mine itself. And the players, when investigating, discover that basically everyone has been either captured, killed, or turned into meanlocks.
Meanlocks!
They're so cute. They're in fact not cute. They're terrifying creatures
horrifying.
Born of torture, despair, and torment of the Fey Wild.
Yeah, so
insectoid dudes.
Yeah, and my one gripe, which is not anybody who wrote this adventure's fault, I don't like the way that the meanlocks.
Oh no.
I don't like the way the meanlocks look. They're just like big bugs. They look. I would like them to be shadowier and creepier, but they look like
tiny umber hulks.
Yeah, basically with spiny like pincers. It's fine. I would maybe like describe them differently, but their stats and their function is really, really cool. They give people nightmares, and they inflict psychic damage, and they capture people and turn them into meanlocks. And so you creep through this town, and there's a bunch of great touches, like a unfinished gravestone, and you can find a merchant's cart that's been abandoned, and turns out he was captured and turned into a meanlock. And then in the mayor's house, there's like, this is really great. Like you could find out this tragic tale of the mayor trying to like save her doomed town and sending her children away, and ultimately being captured and turned into a meanlock herself. And this is all like revealed slowly. Again, if theoretically, as you were exploring. And there's a really cool bit where the meanlock nest is in a room with pillars that are like rigged with dynamite, and it's written as if the meanlock's going to use that against the players, but I was like, hell yeah, tell the players to use that against the meanlocks. This is such like a great horror movie like finale, is blowing the room and running away. I loved this.
I like the ending as well. I was surprised that this was not forced out, because I feel like whenever there's a Forgotten Realms published adventure, they are pretty strict about, no gunpowder or technology. And dynamite is, not in the player's handbook. It is only in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I guess my one quibble is, did someone here develop dynamite? If so, that's perhaps more valuable than the platinum mine itself. Second, okay, I hate to pull this on you, but dynamite is highly volatile and crystallizes and drips. Even modern dynamite. This dynamite is at least 70 years old. It is either unworking or unstable at this point. If you have any engineers in your or chemists in your party, they'll be pulling that out on you.
Matt, it is magical dynamite, as we have discussed.
Is it?
You could do this with explosive. The thing is, you could do this with explosive runes instead. You could say that somebody has inscribed the pillars with explosive runes, but I don't know. The dynamite is more classic. But good point about that. It is maybe the first. Guns have been mentioned, but I think not directly. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
It's fine. I just don't remember there being dynamite in any other adventure. In the Lost Mines of Phandelver, I don't think there was any dynamite. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think so, but I have to go back and look. Maybe
Anyway,
it could just be like flat gunpowder. That doesn't like barrels of gunpowder. Never mind.
Again, like Forgotten Realms.
If you're an engineer or a chemist, do not write us. I will never remember. But
the other thing is, so again, this is just sort of a great open-ended mystery in the sort of classical sense. Like, this entire town has been, it's like an invasion of, some monster movie, but then they're also being turned into monsters. It's great. Everyone's disappeared.
I love an abandoned town. I'm a sucker for an abandoned town. I love sneaking along and finding out what happened and being menaced by monsters. It's great.
There's tons of freedom for the players. I do have a couple of critiques, right? Or ways you can make this a little more interesting. The players will only fight meanlocks and a swarm of bats, right? Now, meanlocks are a fairly interesting idea, but like in their actual stats, they after the fifth encounter with meanlocks, the players might be super bored with this. So keep that in mind. You may need to spice it up, have different varieties of meanlocks or something like that, or add in some other monsters, because really there is a swarm of bats and meanlocks. Those are the only combats your players will see, and it will get repetitive. The second is the sort of hook of why this happened is just sort of because there was a mine collapse and a bunch of miners died and they were tormented, they turned into meanlocks. I was sort of hoping for a little more mystery. Does perhaps this mine or this mountain have a special connection to the Feywild? Is there maybe a passage here? Is there maybe some other Feywild type monster that has put a curse on this area? I just like a little bit more than people died and they turned into meanlocks and then the rest of the town got turned into meanlocks.
Right. This is a good point. The central mystery is enough to keep me engaged, but truthfully, players could just go right to the mine. Why wouldn't they, and immediately discover the meanlocks, and this would be a very short adventure. So they probably won't. They'll probably investigate. But I would definitely consider adding, like Matt said, a couple more combat encounters. There's tons of stuff from the Feywild or other naturally occurring things. Maybe there's some bandits nearby or something. Actually, I can think of a lot of like great things to do to add this and make it a little bit more robust. But
yeah, add some other Fey monsters, add some other ghosts, add different types of meanlocks. Say something like, ask yourself the question, what caused this? And basically add in that there's in fact a, deeper into the mountain, an underground portal to the Feywild Underdark or something like that. Something, mix two things together there. Or that, there was, when they opened the mine, they angered a dryad even more generations ago, and that curse there left people susceptible to Feywild influences.
I mean, the whole thing about meanlocks is that they slowly drive people mad, so it would be very easy to have any number of NPCs or human or humanoid bad guys, or not necessarily bad guys, who are here and would attack any players that arrived if you're looking to add some encounters that way. I do agree with Matt that it probably needs a little bit more for many groups, combat. But that
variety in combat.
Variety
There's enough
in
combat.
Yes.
It's just another group of mean locks
Right.
attack. Mean locks. All right, we've said mean locks more
Mean locks.
times than I
Mean
thought was
lock
humanly
king.
possible. That was A Deep and Creeping Darkness, 4th level, written by Sarah Madsen.
All right. At this rate, we're going to get through this in 5 weeks, but we'll go a little bit faster.
We'll go faster. We don't
We'll
have
go
any
faster
intro
next time.
stuff to talk
So,
about.
This is really exciting. We've got a special interview for next week, and then we'll be back the week after that with more Candlekeep Mysteries. This is a great book. We're excited to talk about it. Yeah, we'll have more final thoughts after our next episode on this, but so far, so good.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you get a chance, we'd appreciate a rating or review. If you have any questions about these adventures or things you want us to talk about, drop us a line at dmofnone@gmail.com.
Yep. We love it. Love to see it. Thanks, everybody. Get vaccinated, stay safe, and keep rolling them dice.